Hello and welcome to the module 4 of our Practical AI in Healthcare course. In this module, we will be covering on AI for career development, and we will be focusing on the use of AI tool for developing a powerful CV and for writing the reference letters. So this is my faculty disclosure and our steps for mitigation of potential bias. And this educational content adheres to the national standard for support of accredited CPD activities through the following mechanisms. Now, this is the learning objective. So we will be initially learning on the basics of a perfect CV. What are the things to be included? What are the things to be avoided? And then how we can use AI tools to create, format, and tailor a perfect academic CV. Then we will be learning on what are the like etiquettes to be followed on writing a reference letter, and what are the use of AI in like writing this reference letter. And in the academic CV building part, we will be, in addition to building the CV, we will also see the designing part, like how we can use AI for designing as well. And finally, we will be seeing on how you can polish your professional bio. So I'm planning to cover two aspects. One, how you can convert your CV into a full-fledged website using AI, and how this website can be converted into a QR code so that you can include that in your all the like your say visiting cards and all those digital printed materials. Then we will also see how you can use AI for polishing your LinkedIn profile so that it will looks really neat for the maximum impact. All right. So welcome once again. Now we will move to the first part. So we will see what are the fundamentals of a proper CV. Okay. So this is I am sure that all of you will be knowing what exactly are the core components of a CV, but let me just brush through the whole information. So at the top, usually we'll have the personal information, right? And after that, we will be usually in some of the CVs, there will be the sections on address or of the participant with the phone numbers and all, and there will be areas where we'll mention the academic training and all. But ideally, after that, expected part is professional summary, in which we will give a 3 to 5 sentences of executive summary of the entire career of that candidate, and it will be followed by the education and training, and we will then include the professional affiliations, honors and awards, or the volunteer work that the candidate has done. It will be followed by the research and publication, and as well as the clinical experience of the candidate. Then at the end, we will be having all the details of the skills and procedure that is being done in case if it's a clinical specialty, and also the license and certification of the candidate. All right. So these are the basic core sections of a CV, and there are some orders also. Okay. So we'll be seeing each and every one of them in detail. Now, these are some of the basic designing principle. Okay, so usually what I usually observe is like whenever in my institution, when we get CVs from the fresh candidates, especially the residents and those who are planning to join as the junior faculty, they love to design the CVs with very like elegant fonts, like fancy colors, fancy designs, and so on. But ideally, it's always better to avoid all those fancy part and make it looks really professional. Okay, so there are some standard fonts that we traditionally use in Microsoft Word and Google Docs, and also one of them is called Lato. Then there is another called Arial and Calibri. Okay, so these are the standard fonts, and these are the recommended fonts to be followed, and there is a reason for that. So I'll be telling you the reason later on. And then another this like trend that we usually see is sometimes the CV will be too concise, or on the other end of the spectrum, the CV will be too elaborate. Okay, so ideally, it's better to aim for 2 to 4 pages rather than elaborating too much. Then regarding the font size, it should be readable. It should not be too large or too small. So ideal font size is somewhere in the range of 11 or 12. Okay. Then coming to the designing part, it's always better to avoid bright colors. Sometimes I have seen like most of the CVs, they will add a purple color or a dark green borders and so on. So it's better not to add that bright colors. Avoid the grayish some areas also. So it's always better to have a white background with a properly structured manner. Okay, and also it's always suggested to avoid the thick chunk of data. It's like suppose under certain qualifications or experience and all, there will be a tendency to write too much content in the form of paragraph. So it's always better to avoid that chunk of text, and it's always better to put them as bullet points, right? And there should be a proper margin also. Okay, and a minimum size of the margin should be 1 inches. Okay, and regarding the experience of the your experience or regarding your educational qualification, it's always better to go in the reverse chronology as shown in the image, rather than going from your initial education to the latest qualification that you attained. It should always go the other way. Okay, and always go for a consistency, like formatting style and all. Like suppose if you are following a particular types of bulleting or a particular font in the initial part, it should be followed till the end. Okay, so that consistency always shows the professionalism of the candidate. So these are the four key things that we should keep in mind, that will make the CV more clear, and this will create maximum impact. Okay. Now our idea is to use AI for writing this, but it's always better. Like whenever, even if AI is writing this, we should have some idea regarding what are the etiquettes to be followed, so that even if AI makes some mistakes in following them, you will be able to correct it, right? Then this is an interesting thing. Suppose if you are planning to apply for a job on a Western country, or say in areas like Dubai and all, usually in all the big institutions, they use a software called ATS. Okay, so it's the ATS stands for applicant tracking system. Okay, so these are mainly in large corporate hospitals where they are getting large number of CVs on a regular basis, right? So in that case, what they do is they will when you send a CV, usually the CV will be scanned by the ATS software, and it will be automatically analyzed for certain characteristics. It's almost like an AI. Okay, so it will automatically say they are receiving 100 CVs for one particular position. So they will scan, the ATS will scan, and suppose if they want to shortlist 15 candidates, so it will follow a certain, it can be pre-fed with so much information, like what are the things to be looked at and so on. And the software itself will shortlist the 15 people, and these 15 people will be 15 candidates will be like invited for the interview, where the real HR people will be seeing you, right? So this ATS scanning is a big issue. Like ATS has some issues. It's like they actually look for certain specific things in a CV. Certain types of data will not be read by ATS. So if you have some very vital information, but it is located in a wrong area, again ATS won't be understanding that. So that even if you are the highly qualified for that position, you may not be shortlisted. So these are the issues. So it should always be a we should make it a point, like our CV, whatever our be the final CV, that should be compliant with the ATS software. Okay, so one of the key thing is keyword alignment. Keyword alignment means it will specifically look for certain specific keywords, like say words like emergency department, work, like work experience, like so many keywords. Okay, so these keywords should be present consistently throughout the throughout the write up. Okay, suppose if you are writing in a not in a formal tone, or if keywords are not properly present, then there's a chance that it will actually, what the ATS software do is like it will scan the CV of each candidate and give it a score based on so many parameters. So presence of keywords is a very important parameter. And if the keywords are not there, we will be covering keywords in detail later on. So if keywords are not present, then there's a high chance that the score will be lower. Okay, so you won't be shortlisted. Secondly, the formatting is really important. Suppose if you format in a very complex way, you are adding text boxes and then you are putting inside that, you have two columns instead of a single column data, you are putting the like structure like two columns. Or suppose if you have a table, so there is an issue with ATS on scanning that. So if there are two columns, ATS might scan only one column and the other will not be scanned. If there are tables, it again the same issue, it will maybe scanning only one or two columns in the table, and rest of the content will be skipped. Okay, so sometimes your most important your highlight of the CV might be present in that unscanned area, so that you will get a lower score. So that's also really important. Now, regarding the bullet point also, as you can see in this particular image, you can see two types of traditional bullet points, one dot and one hyphen, right? So it's always better to go for that. So if you look at the Microsoft Word and all, you will see there are so many fancy types of bullet points. Again, the problem is it looks really nice on a print, but for the ATS software, sometimes it will misread this as some other things, and those lines might be skipped. So it's always better to avoid such fancy bullet points also. Then there should be a standard headings for all the sections. This thing like, as you can see, work experience, board certified, education, such standard headings should be present. Okay, we should not be putting our own headings. Again, this will make it that ATS will actually score a lower marks if that unconventional headings are present. Okay, then another main thing is usually in our CVs we will put some really attractive elements at the top in the header part, or might be in the bottom in the footer area. Okay, so again, ATS cannot read the content given in a header or footer. So if you are putting some relevant information in the header or footer, again that also will be missed. Okay, so in a print or in a PDF version, this will be clearly visible. This might be highlighted in a like a box and so on, but in a ATS machine, no human is being intervened. It's completely machine, and that particular software will completely ignore these data. Okay, so these are the things to be kept in mind when you are creating the CV. So in addition to your main main content that should be present in the final CV, the what I am stressing is it should be compliant with it should be completely in accordance with the rules set up by the ATS machine also, so that in case you are using the CV, you are sending the CV to a big corporate hospital and they are using an ATS software for screening the CV of all the candidates, you should we should definitely ensure like our CV gets through the filter and get into the shortlisted one, right? So we should keep these things in mind. Then the second is how you can craft the description. Like you have so many headings, right? Under that we will be writing so many descriptions about our previous experience and all. So on the left side you can see some like some casual description that will be used by some of the candidates. So you can see responsible for patient care in the cardiology unit, worked with residents, involved in infection control. So we will use these terms in a very casual manner, right? But instead of that, the HR manager or the person who will be scrutinizing your CV, or even an ATS machine who will be ranking your CV based on the content, they will be specifically looking for values. Okay, so instead of responsible for patient care in cardiology unit, it should be like managed a daily caseload of 15 to 20 cardiology patients with complex condition. So that clearly showed your expertise, right? Rather than just casually telling that you worked in a cardiology unit, right? Second is work with residents. If you are showing your teaching experience, it should be mentioned like led and mentored a team of 5 residents in daily rounds and clinical decision making. Again, it shows your experience. Then comes the your extra activity, like you are in addition to your like usual work in the department, you are also part of the infection control. So that should be again will be stressed with some values. So you can mention like spearheaded an infection control protocol that reduced post-surgical infection rates by 20%. So it shows like you are highly competent to be part of this institution. You can bring your own expertise to like reduce infection in this hospital and so on, right? So obviously you can, when you look at a before and after, you can see if you are the HR, you will really like the CV in which these types of data are present, right? And you can even add some bold like formatting, like not that too obvious, but you can consider putting some bold formatting to those highlight parts also. Okay, so that's a nice thing. And one takeaway point is like there are something like whenever you are describing, use the strong action verb. Action verbs here is managed, led and mentored, spearheaded. Okay, such action verbs will actually improve the quality of your CV and quantify your achievements. Like instead of showing just like in words, add the values like 15 to 20, 5 residents, 20%. That's, in that way, you quantify your achievement so that it will looks really attractive. All right. So that is another main thing that you should keep in mind. Now there are two types of CVs depending on your expertise or depending on the position that you are planning to like apply for. So one is an academic CV, the other is a clinical CV. Okay, suppose if you are planning to join an institution where they have a strong emphasis on research and you are looking for an academic position or like a faculty, then an academic CV format will be more like suitable for you. On the other end of the spectrum, if you are working, you are planning to join an institution which is like a corporate setup, they are rather than research and such activity or teaching, they are focusing on patient care. So you will need a clinical CV. Okay, so both things have their own focus and key points. So I'll go to each of the sections one by one. So in an academic CV, the focus is on scholarly productivity, whereas in a clinical one, obviously it's on your clinical expertise and patient care. And in academic CV, you should definitely put your list of publication, like how many articles you have in a Q1, Q2, or Q3 journal, like whether you received any grants during this, and you can mention the amount of grants and your teaching experience and so on. Whereas in the clinical one, you should prioritize on your work experience, like we mentioned in the previous slide, like how many patients you see on a daily basis, like how much are your patient exposure, your clinical skills, how much volume of procedures that you have done. So that should be a key focus. Okay, and regarding the size of the academic CV, previously I mentioned like the CV should be restricted to 2 to 3 pages, but in an academic CV, you can add volumes of your work, including the publications, or not the entire details of the publication or the abstract, but all the details of the extra things that you have done in the like teaching part or in the academic part. Whereas in the clinical one, it's always better to go for the traditional length of 2 to 4 pages. Okay, and there should be like the tone that will be used in academic CV. Okay, so that should be like a formal tone, factual and comprehensive. Whereas in a clinical one, it should be more towards a persuasive tone, highlighting the quantifiable clinical outcome. Okay, so these are the main differences between the two. So like usually, suppose if you are a medical college faculty or you are working in a clinical department or applying for a teaching hospital, so obviously this will be a mix of academic and clinical. But there will be case in which you are going for a purely academic role or you are going for a purely clinical role. In that case, there should be a clear demarcation between the two. All right, so that's the difference. Now there are some not to build lists, like things that you should definitely avoid in your CV. Okay, so this is also a big red flag if some of them are present. Okay, so in most of the CVs, especially CVs in, I'll be focusing on the countries later on, but usually for CVs in most of the countries, they do not want you to include your age or date of birth or your marital status or your religion unless specifically asked. Okay, so these are considered as unprofessional and can introduce a bias. So for most of the countries, this is a big like you should never include that. Okay, so it's a big red flag. Now regarding the photographs in Western countries, especially US, UK, Canada, and Australia, it's not customary to include your photographs. But in countries like India, it's a traditional to include photographs. In Middle East also, there is optional that I will be covering later on. Again, in the CV part, you should never mention your current salary or your expected salary. Okay, that is something that will be discussed later on once you get an interview and once they are happy with you, once they are planning to place you in that role, then you can have the salary negotiation. So you should never include the salary part in your CV. Then you should also do not include the reasons for leaving your past job. Okay, so obviously that's not a good practice. Then if you are like a resident or like you are going for that initial posting and all jobs and all, so obviously you should never include your examination score. The employees are not at all interested in knowing your USMLE score. Okay, and you should not include any sensitive ID numbers like passport numbers, your license numbers, DA number, in like your PAN number, Aadhaar number. All such personal ID numbers should not be included in CV, obviously, right? So these are the things to be excluded. Now, there are some pitfalls to avoid. So this is almost, I have covered most of them, but I'll just brush them in detail. So one is obviously we mentioned like dense block of text is should not be included. So it should always be in the form of bullet points. Otherwise, ATS software will ignore that. Okay. Second, this is really important. Like I had seen some recent CVs which I had received. So in those CVs, the issue was like the person has written everything nicely, but there are some typing mistakes, like some grammar mistakes and spelling mistakes here and there. Okay, so this is like a reflection, like the person lacks a having a it's not person is not meticulous. There's a lack of attention to detail. Okay, that's why the person missed all this. So if you are using AI to write the CV, obviously grammar and spelling mistakes will not be there. But again, you should always double check to ensure that there are no typos. Okay, then okay. Generic and non-tailored content, I think I have already covered that. Then comes that really important part, your email ID. Okay, like nowadays in the youngsters, I have seen a practice like they have or they like to have a cool email ID, something like docdude@hotmail.com. In that manner, they will write, but this is completely unprofessional. So if you have a email ID in that manner, always change that to in a professional version in which your first name and surname are there in the Gmail ID, okay, in your email ID, okay, so that looks a bit more professional rather than having that this type of fancy Gmail IDs, okay, and always avoid including the outdated information also, like you had worked in this place 15 years back, so they unless the place is of that much importance, it's a institution of national importance, then it's completely fine. Otherwise, it's better to skip all the information about 10 or 15 years, okay. So these are the common pitfalls to avoid. Now, these are some international guidelines on creating CVs if you are planning to apply for a job in these specific countries. Okay, so for US, as I mentioned, photos should not be included. Age and marital status, all those personal details should not be there. Structure should be focused with education and training as the initial part, followed by the experience and so on. And if the state license is state license as well as the board certification status should be definitely included. So these are the basic things to be followed in US. Okay, and Canada is also follows the same pattern for the photos and all. There should not be any photos and there should not be any personal data. Language skills are highly valued in Canada, so you can mention whether you are fluent in English, whether you speak French. All those can be included, which is not that common in other countries, like your language skills. Then you need to mention your Canadian specific credentials like LMCC, CCFP, FRCPC. So if you have these credentials, you should mandatorily include those credentials. Okay. Now coming to UK, again, that no photo rule applies to Canada. Then you should must include your GMC registration number. Okay. And sections for audit and quality improvements are highly valued by NS. So if you're part of a audit team that you have done clinical audit, so many number of clinical audits, then you have been part of the quality team, you have done so many CAPAs, you have worked with different quality bodies, like say if it's in India, there is something called NAC and NABH. So if you have some experience in that, that will be highly valued by the NHS. Okay, so these are the things that you should keep in mind if you are writing for UK. Now, why I'm mentioning this, because sometimes there will be scenarios in which you have your education in one country and you are planning to migrate a new country. So your existing CV might have tailor-made for your original country, but you have to modify it according to the requirements of your country that you are planning to migrate to. That's why I'm specifically mentioning this. Now, later on in the second session, we will be seeing the AI tools which can write the CV for you. So once it creates the CV, you can specifically mention it to modify so that it's according to the rules and etiquettes followed in a particular country. So it can automatically modify all these changes. Okay, so that's a very nice part of AI, because AI clearly knows what are the various etiquettes to be followed in each country. Now, there are a few sets of other countries also, like for Australia, again, the no photo and personal data rule, age, PRA registration status need to be included. Then local norms are also there, often includes a list of 2 to 3 referees, like you should specifically mention 2 to 3 referees at the end. Now, for the Middle East, they really expect you to include a photo and personal detail, especially your nationality, date of birth, and marital status. And in Middle East, they actually that studies show that they like accept the visually elaborate or flashy designs, okay, and which shows that you can your CV stands out and all. But unless they are not using the ATS software, this is completely fine. And the tone, previously I mentioned like it should be in an academic or a formal tone, but in the Middle East, it can be a confident tone, okay, and you can promote your own achievements, okay. So that's one of the difference in Middle East. And for India, rules are slightly different. It's like you can include your photos, okay, and traditionally you can include personal details, but in the modern period, modern this thing, you can omit the personal data. The that your registration number, like there will be one NMC registration number will be there, that should be included. And since there are so many languages which are spoken in India, so your proficiency with the language is highly valued. So your proficiency with the Hindi and other regional languages can be mentioned with which can show like you can cater to a linguistically diverse patient, okay. So that's also a good thing in the Indian CVs. Now, finally, this is the consolidation of the things to be kept in mind when you are creating the CV. The CV should be tailored for the role. It should be having a clean and professional design. Traditionally or ideally, it should be a single column layout without having multiple columns. And it should be having a standard font and with a standard font size. Bullet point should be in a traditional format rather than having fancy bullet points. So that the CV is compatible with ATS. Use high impact language in the writing, especially using action words and quantifiable results. And you should meticulously proofread the entire CV 2 to 3 times to ensure that it is free of spelling mistakes and grammatical errors. And always ensure the country that you are targeting, that particular your CV is compliant with the rules and etiquettes followed in a global country. All right. So these are the things that you should keep in mind when you're creating a professional CV. Now, in the next session, we will be seeing how you can use AI to craft this. Okay. So AI is ready to help you. So I'm sure that you might have learned a few new things in this particular initial part, right? Introduction part. So based on that, we will be building on how you can build the CV. Okay. So thank you and welcome aboard for the module 4 once again. Thank you.